Hello again. This time, welcome to Jakarta, the capital of the world's fourth most populous nation. I'm here at the invitation of the think tank, the Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia, to debate whether there is a new world order or it is a new world disorder. That unthinkable. What should remain? What should be fixed? What should be replaced? It's been a vibrant debate around the world. Listen in. Lovely to be here in Jakarta, and let me underscore what I've been looking at, thinking the unthinkable. How much of what is happening now is unthinkable? When you listen to what we heard the UN Secretary General say about 20 minutes ago, norms and principles are buckling. We want to explore in the next 70 minutes quite how much they are buckling, but how much can be preserved. The world order is really standing at a moment of profound transition, but in which way is it really going to go? That's what we want to hear from our guests today. Long-standing dominance of US leadership, it's coming to an end. Liberal rules-based system now finds itself under considerable strain. The deepening rivalry between the United States and China is causing new tensions, new uncertainties. Russia's growing assertiveness as well across multiple regions. Europe's recalibration of its global role and the Global South's rising agency, they're all reshaping the way the world navigates power and influence. Increasingly, democracy is under threat, or certainly under question, and autocrats feel increasingly empowered. At the same time, new blocs, such as BRICS, and also the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, are creating new frameworks for global governance, while traditional alliances face mounting pressures to adapt. Multipolarity is no longer a forecast. It's an emerging reality, giving rise to new dynamics of competition and cooperation. So we want to delve into the evolving international order. Is it order, or is it increasingly disorder? It's up to our guests to help define that. Are we being too pessimistic? Should we be more optimistic? What elements of the current system should remain? What requires reform? What ultimately needs to be replaced? And if it needs to be replaced, will there ever be a consensus to get it replaced? We'll explore how major powers, middle powers, all powers, and the Global South are positioning themselves in very different ways. Will there be any rules that are widely respected going forward?
The distribution of power around the world has changed rapidly, and this by itself will drive the need to create the next world order, however that looks like. So there's more coalitions emerging in the world system. So the weight of the world is changing, the distribution of power is changing, the power relationship is changing. And I would say in the next world order, at least one thing is certain, that is the primacy of the West that we knew in the first decades after World War II is not going to be there any longer.
Your assessment of what the status is of the new world order, of the old world order, is it crumbling? Is it reconstitutable? Or do you feel gloomy about the prospects?
No, I do think that the point about the inflection point is crucial here. I think there's a growing realization that we are at a point that we can't continue going on as we did before. And I'd like to draw a parallel between what's happening in my own country, the Netherlands. I am calling you from The Hague, the city of peace and justice, which just recently had elections again, and where polarization is clearly undermining trust in the system and the quality of governance. But voters have also just really expressed a very strong preference for stability, for quality governance, and maybe even for a slight return to doing things the way we did in the past. I think that is one way of getting to a proper conversation on what we really need. And actually, finally, it doesn't matter how many rules we articulate. What citizens want from their governments, and I think what global citizens want from the international system, is a system that delivers, that addresses their concerns, rather than have endless conferences about who violated the rules when. If you start delivering, you also create legitimacy for the very rules that enabled it. Because to end up with this metaphor of the cage, I really regret that international law could be seen as a cage. I would much rather have the rules of the road be seen as a way to create predictability, to create stability, and to create trust. Something that I'd much rather have more of than less. Thank you, Nick.
Thanks, Bob. Let me go back to Sujan. Let me just put that point to you as well, particularly with the kind of experience you've detailed a few minutes ago, Sujan. Again, that question to you about whether some parts of the current world order are not outdated, they're simply underperforming or politically blocked. In other words, can they be resurrected given the current environment in international geopolitics?
Actually, I entirely agree with you, Nick, that there are many aspects of the current world order that can actually be improved upon and that they can contribute to the larger good. So we really shouldn't be throwing the baby out with the bathwater. This is the only order that we have, and we must try to preserve it, and we must try to improve upon it. The irony in these situations is that there's nowhere to turn to for a second opinion today. The UN is totally incapable of doing this. Outside of that normative order, there are structures today which must be encouraged, such as the G20.
Yes, we can talk about the multilateral system, the UN system, and so on. But our ability, for many countries, their ability to fix the region and create their own norms, that's what will shape and help fix the world order, assuming that the world order is the totality of regional orders. And the other thing also, I mean, relating to previous comments, I think the term rules and norms can be generic and abstract. And what is more specific is international law. So the behavior and action of countries can be measured against whether or not it is compliant with international law. And unfortunately, recent events in Ukraine and also in Gaza demonstrate that international humanitarian law and international law can be violated, but pretended by countries that violated these laws as something normal or justifiable.
Thank you, Dino.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, let me go to the Netherlands for two reasons. First of all, Bob, you spend much of your time working on Eastern Europe and the Caucasus. And secondly, you're in The Hague, where you have an enormous number of institutions and creating the accountability, the International Criminal Court and so on. Is there that feeling, both in The Hague and also in the work that you're doing for Klingendel across Ukraine, that arms control treaties, the kind of things which were battled over for year after year, are disintegrating, and the respect for law, particularly when it comes to the issue of genocide, International Criminal Court and so on, that all those are now under real pressure, which means they have less value and less durability?
No, I fully agree, Nick, and that is, I think, a regret among many people in this city who work for these institutions that were actually designed to uphold international law, International Court of Justice, but also newer ones like the International Criminal Court. You see a clear backsliding. We have seen an EU member state, Hungary, basically pulling out of the Rome Statute. The International Criminal Court is probably one of the least popular institutions when it, according to the United States and many others. So it really is very difficult to uphold things that we could still agree on in the 90s and that we cannot now. But your point on arms control in Eastern Europe, I very much like to pick up on it. Why did we have all these things? Why did we design painstakingly in the 70s and later in the 90s all these things? Because there was a common agreement among the major powers that we wanted to avoid an arms race and a world war. And I think that is still a common agreement that we have. It is just that all of the treaties are starting to crumble one after another.
Bob, thank you very much indeed. Right, we're half an hour from the end, but that means I'm going to broaden it now out into the other, to involve the other discussants. We've got 6 of you coming in from Turkey, from Kazakhstan, from China, from New York, and also from Poland as well. So we're going to get a broader view now, and I'd like you to input with your own ideas of what you've been hearing, whether you agree or disagree.
Even the most powerful must sometimes choose limits over leverage. Rules in the end are only as strong as the restraint behind them. If that culture of self-discipline fades, we risk replacing hierarchy with chaos, not balance.
It's estimated by 2050, 1 in 4 people in the world will be African. What does that mean? It means our youth are representing a formidable force in global growth. India's vast domestic market and manufacturing base puts it on track to being the second world largest economy. However, we are still left out of major issues like international peace and security.
You see, in Turkey's official rhetoric, we see there is a crisis of legitimacy emphasis of the Western-led order, which has opened a space for all middle powers almost to become spokesmen and brokers of the global South, and Turkey is one of the pioneers of it. The third one is there is a jam in the classical multilateralism, and in this jam, middle powers like Turkey, they act as architects and users of fragmented issue-specific institutions.
I think we need to stop looking back with nostalgia and need to look forward, and we need to put our focus on, not only on what we should do, but what we can do. So to look forward, I think the first reality we have to recognize is the collapse of the liberal international order, no matter you like it or not.
I would frame institutional reform not as demolition project, but as overdue maintenance on a house we still live in. The problem is not the absence of institutions. It is widening gap between the design and today's distribution of power and vulnerability.
To summarize what we've just heard, can the political class cope with what we've just been hearing?
Well, thank you. Look, I think when we talk about the next world order, Nick, I'm actually in favor of revising the UN Charter. Keep in mind that the UN Charter is not a Bible, it's not a Quran. Even the writers of the UN Charter believe that at some point the UN Charter can be adapted to the changing circumstances. And certainly the founding fathers of the UN Charter could not foresee whatever trends is going on in the 21st century. And secondly, we heard a lot of ideas about changing the UN Security Council. Great ideas, great propositions. But unfortunately, I believe all these ideas will just be noises unless we can have a clear UN process, UN mandate to reform and enact that reform of the UN Security Council in terms of veto powers, permanent members structure, and so on. And unfortunately, we're not seeing any of that. So all these propositions are just becoming noises and not materializing. And finally, when we talk about the next world order, responding to what you said earlier about the growth of BRICS, SEO, and other arrangement, I think the next world order will see a number of mini orders existing within the context of the world order. It's going to be an eclectic mini orders that are just forming out of regionalism and forming out of plurilateralism and so on. So I look forward to see how all this will evolve into the next world order.
So Dino, thank you very much indeed. And a reminder of what the UN Secretary General said right at the beginning of this, that the systems, the norms and principles are, in his words, buckling. And we started by talking about a moment of profound transition, but certainly from our Thinking the Unthinkable work, it's very difficult to predict which way things are going to go. What has to happen among a lot of leaders, every leader, is creating new mind muscle, new flexibility, new understanding, new mindsets to handle the enormity of what is coming at very great speed. Thank you all very much indeed.